All right, moving on to chapter 31, expanding the conversation, Mozart, chamber music, and larger forms. Now, Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik. This is one of the pieces we're going to talk about in this lecture. So that was created by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was born in 1756 and died in 1791. Now, we're going to take a look at Mozart's life. He was an Austrian composer and pianist. He's the son of Leopold Mozart. I like to call him Papa Leo. The father, was an esteemed court composer violinist. So he had his own musical talents as well. Now, Mozart was the most extraordinarily gifted child in the history of music. He was a child prodigy, and even at the age of 5, he was already composing pieces. As a young child, he was touring around Europe, playing and writing his own music, playing concertos and writing operas and all kinds of things. He is just like he was so gifted, and it was an extreme treat for people to see him perform. However, he rebelled against the patronage system. So remember, during this classical era, composers or musicians, they made their living based on the wants and needs of the elite. They wanted to have make sure that music was part of their upbringing, and so they would hire musicians or music masters or composers to perform or provide music for their events and festivities. So you had to write or perform whatever your patron wanted, and Mozart rebelled against that. So at the age of 25, he became a freelance musician in Vienna. However, he struggled because he was poor, but he was doing it on his own. He's kind of like the indie musician back during that time. Now, Mozart's music was very elegant, and he had songful melodies. However, he also had contrasts of mood, and that added drama and effect to the music. At the peak of his career, he wrote 3 comic operas, The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, and Così fan tutti. He was a prolific composer of all genres, not just one, so he wrote lots of chamber works, keyboard works, symphonies, concertos, and operas. Now, for Mozart's chamber music, now remember the chamber ensemble can vary from 2 players up to 10 players. And he wrote a lot of divertimentos and serenades. And this is a lighter genre, so it's not a very bombastic or dramatic type of music. And this was music that's performed at social functions, like outdoor gatherings, after dinner. This is evening type music, very light music. The next piece that we're going to talk about a little bit later is Eine kleine Nachtmusik, which means a little night music. And this is a serenade. This is for a string quartet, so 2 violins, viola, cello, and a double bass. This is for public entertainment, outdoor venues, outdoor events, small, dinner gatherings, that type of thing. This piece is in 4 movements, and they're very compact, very intimate, and it's beautifully proportioned. Now, the proportions, this structure, this was a very prominent theme during the classical era. Everything needed to be in its proper place, very logical. So when you have phrases, meaning similar to like how we have our sentences, we have the subject and the answer, or subject and predicate. The same thing happens with music. We have the first part of a statement, and then we have the second part that answers that statement and completes that whole sentence. So that's what we mean by phrases. Now, for the structural conventions, this is how the forms provide framework in the music. We have the use of a sonata allegro form, and this is a more complex and intricate style. We have a fluid-like framework, so each piece that has a sonata allegro form could vary. There's so many different possibilities that it's not always going to be the same thing for every piece. So there's some slight variations. Now, this is a more profound musical conversation that can get into a little bit more detail, more depth, more drama, more diversity. And this was a favorite for instrumental composers because this is the chance for them to really dig in and develop some of those materials. Now, the first movement of the Eine kleine Nachtmusik is in the sonata allegro form. And so this first movement is usually a fast tempo, the allegro, really fast. And however, in the time frame or scheme or timeline, if you will, of all the movements in this piece, usually the first movement is the longest in this multi-movement cycle. So the sonata allegro has the drama between two contrasting key areas. And usually that would be the tonic, which is meaning our home key, our do, and our dominant, which is our home away from home key, and that's usually the fifth away from the do or the dominant. So if we were in the key of C, which is our home, the dominant, which is the fifth away, so C, D, E, F, G, G would be that next key area. And because G and C are closer together, they're related, they have similar common tones, that's the next neighboring key. Now the exposition, in the sonata allegro form, we can break that up into three parts. The first section is called the exposition. And this is where we state the themes in their two different keys and their two different styles. So the first statement is usually in the home key, the tonic. And then after that theme has been stated, we have a little bridge that's going to transition and modulate. So now we're moving to the new key. And once we're in that new key, we start theme 2. And that new key is always going to be a contrasting key. It's not going to be the same starting key. Now, after the second theme has completely stated what it needs to be, what needs to be said, we have a closing section. And sometimes in that closing section, we have a closing theme that's not really related. And then the exposition, that whole section with theme 1, bridge, theme 2, closing section repeats. And once that's done, that's the end of the exposition. Here we have a watercolor painting of Leopold Mozart, I like to call him Papa Leo, with his two young children, Nannerl and Wolfgang. Now, they are performing in Paris. This is 1763 to 64. And this is on one of their many tours that they had throughout Europe. Now, Nannerl, Mozart's sister, older sister, was also a prodigy, if you will. She was a composer and a fantastic pianist as well. So they really had a truly gifted, talented musical family. All right, on to the second section of the sonata allegro form. We have the development. Now, this section is where we have all the conflict, the action, the drama, the building of that tension, the releasing of it, just all these, it's just all the stuff that just explodes. And here we have the themes, but they're varied, they're expanded, they're contracted. So, they're longer, they're shorter, they're fragments, and so it's just very unstable in this section. We move to foreign keys. We have frequent modulations. We never have that steady, grounded foundation of a key because we're constantly moving and shifting. And the activity of it, it's just really restless, just swirling around, different ideas here and there and there. This is why composers are just like, yes, I get to do this and that and this and that and this. And then, the bridge at the end brings it back to the tonic, that first starting key that we had theme 1 in. And then we move into the third final section, which is the recapitulation. So recap, meaning we're going back to the beginning again. Now we're in the home key. This is our psychological climax, right? This is the first time we return to this first theme, and we restate the themes in the tonic, both themes. Remember, in the exposition, we have theme 1 in our tonic and theme 2 in our dominant, But when we're in the recapitulation, theme 1 and theme 2 are back in the tonic. Now at the end of this recapitulation, we have a coda, which is an extension of the closing idea, and then we have a final cadence in the home key. So here we have a diagram that shows the different parts of this sonata allegro form. So this might be easier for visual learners. So we have a slow introduction. So in the exposition, this is our statement section. We have a slow introduction. Sometimes that happens, and sometimes it just starts with theme 1, depending on what the composer wants to do. So then we have that first theme, and we expand upon it within the tonic. Then we have a bridge that we're traveling now to the second theme, which is in a contrasting key. Then we have a closing theme, and we cadence in that contrasting key. And then we repeat those 3 sections of the exposition, and then we're done with the exposition. We move into the development section, and we build that tension, and we have frequent modulations, and we have fragmented parts of the theme. They're not complete statements. And then at the end of all that, we transition, so we're modulating, moving back into the tonic. And then we have our recapitulation or restatement of the themes. And we have theme 1 back in our original tonic. We have a bridge that rarely modulates, but we're generally going to be in that tonic. Now theme 2, which was originally in a different key, is now in the tonic. It's stated in the tonic. We have our closing theme, and we cadence in the tonic. And then we have our coda, which is our final ending, our additional ending, that's also cadencing in the tonic. I also like how it's color-coded, so you can kind of see the differences and see the sections differently. All right, now that was the first movement, the sonata allegro form. Now we have the third movement, which is a minuet and trio form. And this has its origins from the Baroque era with the court dances. This type of minuet dance is a stately triple meter. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, very very royal and regal. And this minuet and trio has an ABA form or ternary form with 2 different pairs of dances. So we have our A theme, and then we have the B section, which originally back in the Baroque era would only be played by 3 instruments, so that means the trio part. But since that's no longer a thing, even though there's more than 3 instruments being played in the trio section, it's still called a trio. And then when we go back to the A section, we call it a da capo. And in Italian, da capo means from the beginning or to the top or to the head, right? Capo, top of the head. So we have the A section, the B section, and then we have the A section, or da capo, and we repeat that first dance. Now within the internal structure of these 2 different dances, we have a binary form or a rounded binary form. So remember, binary is 2 parts, so A and B. Now I know it could be a little confusing. We have a big A section or a big B section, and then we have a little a and a little b. So when you're looking at the book or looking at the slides or looking at your notes, keep in mind the big A versus the little a, big B versus the little b. So the big A is the big whole chunk of that section of that music, and then we move to a whole nother chunk of the B section. But within that big A, we have a little a and a little b. And if they're just stated as little a, little b, it's binary. However, if it's rounded binary, we have the little a, little b, and then we go back to the little a. And within these subsections, we repeat them. So we can have an AA, BB, or we can have an AA, BA, BA. So whether you're binary or rounded binary, those little intersections or little sections, subsections of the big A, big B would be repeated. When we return to the big A section, the minuet, right? So we have the minuet, the trio, the minuet. When we return to the minuet, we play it without the repeats. So instead of having the AA, BB, or the AA, BA, BA, we just have AB or ABA. And it's a little bit shorter on the return to that A section. We also have symmetrical 4 and 8 measure phrases. And the whole classical era was about having logic and structure and knowing what was happening because of the commonality of that. So when you hear 4 measures, you're going to expect to hear another 4 measures to kind of answer that. Or same thing with 8 measures, like they liked knowing and understanding the form. Here we have a painting of Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And if you guys ever have the chance, you should take some time and watch the movie Amadeus. Even though it's not exactly like how his life was, it's just interesting to see what life could have been like during that time period and how musically gifted he was and just how his brain worked. It really was really nice because we weren't there. We don't know, but it's nice to see like what could have been or what it could be like. Plus, it's a very funny movie. Amadeus has this really annoying laugh that just gets stuck in your head. So you guys should watch that. All right, here we have a picture of a couple performing a minuet quadrille, an 18th century court dance. So quadrille meaning 4. So back then, or back in the Baroque era where these dances were originally from, instead of having that trio with 3 instruments, they probably had 4 instruments. So the name stuck, but that didn't mean that it was only 4 instruments that played in that section. All right, so next we have Listening Guide 21, where we're going to talk about the Eine kleine Nachtmusik, or a little night music. This has the K, which means Kirschel. When you're looking up music by a specific composer, they might have a certain organization number in library terms. And so for Mozart, Kirschel, which was a person who categorized or cataloged all of Mozart's work. So that's what the K means. And 525 is his 525th piece of music. So we're looking at movements 1 and 3, and this piece was composed in 1787. Now, first movement, remember we have the allegro tempo. So the first movement is usually a fast tempo with the sonata allegro form. Now, theme 1 is disjunct, and we have the ascending rocket theme. So, bum, 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 bum. Instead of some scalar, step-by-step motion, it's very leapy, right? All right, now theme 2 is graceful and descending, right? So that theme 1 is very punchy and just like shooting off like the rocket. And theme 2, da, 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 graceful and descending. Then we have a closing theme that's very high energy, fast notes, right? And then we have a short development, and then we have a recapitulation. So it brings back all the themes that we heard before, but they're all going to be in the same tonic key. And then we have a vigorous coda in that home tonic key. All right, then movement 3, which is in an allegretto tempo. So it's still quite fast. With the form of the minuet and trio. And this has a strong triple meter, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we have regular 4-bar phrases with that rounded binary. So every 4 measures we're repeating those 4 measures. And remember, rounded binary, we have little a, and then we have little b, and then we have little a. So we have AA, BA, BA. And then we have, so that's the minuet. It's bright and decisive. And then the trio is a contrasting theme. It's very expressive and conjunct and very lyrical. So remember conjunct, they're moving together smoothly instead of disjunct where it's very leapy. So here's the breakdown for Listening Guide 21. And you can see what theme 1 looks like. Ta, 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 ta. All right, so this is in G major. Then we have a transitional passage and we're modulating. And then we're in the key of D. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. So those are two different melodies there. So this is still the first movement, the allegro. With the expression in this movement, we have sudden dynamic contrasts. So looking at the image here, in the theme 1, you see how we have the forte, so that's going to be the loud dynamic. And then the theme 2, we have the piano, the P, that's the soft dynamic. So you can see the dynamic contrast there. And then moving on to the listening guide breakdown for movement 3, we have a very stately 3/4 triple meter, very decisive character. And the trio theme, all right, that was the first and third movement of Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Now, as we were talking about the symphony expanding and developing, similar things were happening in musics around the world. And another example of that is with the composer and sitar player Ravi Shankar. Now he did a lot of different things, collaborations with different performers around the world. He even performed at Woodstock back in 1969. He also worked with the Beatles, especially Lennon. And in this picture here, composer and sitar player Ravi Shankar is performing here with his daughter Anushka. He was the most renowned and honored figure in Indian classical music of the 20th century. So a lot of these techniques and things that we're talking about during the classical era also made its way into Indian music. And for example, when Shankar worked with the Beatles, this is a great example of Eastern music and Western music collaborating together. And that's it for chapter 31. Next, we're going to move on to chapter 32.